Welcome to BAM, Badass Moms with Lori and Jenny. We are moms on a mission to share women's stories about life, fitness, aging, relationships, travel, and much more. Hello, friends, and thanks for listening. I just wanted to take a second to give you a quick reminder about subscribing to the show. If you have not already, just take a moment and do so. This will make sure that you never miss a daily bite or an upcoming episode. And in addition to that, if you have a few extra moments and like to drop us a review, we'd really appreciate it. And there's also a sponsor of the show located at the bottom of all of our episodes. Once again, thank you for listening. Thank you for being badass. Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us on another episode of The BAM with Lori and Jenny. And today we have a phenomenal guest on our show. Not only is she a badass mom, she has a badass name. And we are so excited to welcome Princess Castleberry to the show today. Princess is a global speaker, and she's also a leadership strategist. So I'm going to let her tell us all about what that means. We are super excited. She has two boys right in the thick of like 12 and 14. So we're going to talk about how she's been able to juggle her career and also juggle raising humans at the same time. So Princess, thank you for joining us on the show and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, both of you ladies.
We've been very excited for this interview. So just a little context. So I met Princess, probably middle of the summer through a colleague, and we hopped on a call and I just was instantly captivated by her. First of all, you have like 1,000-watt smile. So you just put everybody at ease. And your story is just so interesting. And you talk about, you spent 22 years in corporate America. And so of course I totally related to that. And then you took a hard pivot. And so tell us about that. Tell us how and her job was in risk management. So going from a risk management job to taking a massive risk and going out on your own, tell us about that.
Yes. So thank you all for having me. First and foremost, I love this. I love the whole idea of celebrating badass moms. But yes, my career started out in enterprise risk. And I like to demystify that right away because it sounds like a huge thing and it can be complex. But when you think about the simple definition of what a risk is, I define it as the possibility of harm or loss to something of value. So I always flip it and tell people, what do you value? And so we value our careers, we value our homes, our families, our relationships, our reputation. So anything that you value and you work really hard to protect puts you in the realm of risk management. You are a risk manager. And so I believe every single leader is a risk manager. And that's how I introduce everybody to it. But for 22 years, I worked in corporate risk management across several Fortune 500 companies. I've worked in brokerage, insurance brokerage, staffing, construction, education, and have worked with clients across all sorts of industries because I worked in service-based firms that served the Fortune 100. So I've seen lots of things and have done lots of things, but it always comes down to protecting people, purpose, and profits. And so that's how my career started out. And my children have always been fascinated by that because, just even from a young age, I use that definition. So I would just ask them, what do you care about? What do you value? And, they can go on and on about the things they love and value. And I tell them everything that you do to protect it is risk management. So they believe they're risk managers too.
That's awesome. It's a beautiful way to look at it. It really is.
That's perfect. I love it.
Real simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell us, being in corporate America for so long, what was that tipping point that was like, I want to do my own thing. I want to take a pivot and, go in my own direction.
Yeah, I think, for me, it was always underlying. Like I always wanted to have my own business. And I was always in these spaces where, after my first, everybody has their like horror story of a job.
Yeah.
And my career started in a company that was very conservative, great place to learn and grow. but not a place where I really belong. And I didn't really, fit into the culture. And I knew that very early on in my career. So I made a pivot from the insurance brokerage side of the business and got into like in-house corporate risk management with a team that was running a national organization. I used to actually work for the nation's largest home builder, Pulte Homes. And Pulte was an extraordinary place. And that's when I started to realize that there are leaders who will absolutely nurture you, where you could be your full authentic self. I know that those are sort of buzz phrases of today, but good leadership is good leadership. That's, tried and true, time tested. And so I found myself in a place where leaders were very high quality, very nurturing, and very accepting of the whole me. And after you have an experience like that, you never let it go. You're always looking for those qualities. And I've been very fortunate to work in spaces that have elevated me, that did not, push me into a corner or make me, have to hide part of my identity. And so motherhood was always a part of that plan for me. I became a mom when I was 31, right? Sort of in the prime of my career, in the thick of things. Yeah. And I remember having, a newborn baby, a marriage. Honestly, we keep it real on this podcast, a marriage that was starting to fail and some different feelings. And I was at the height of my career. I was running business continuity and disaster response planning for a Fortune 500 company. Wow. When I became a mom. So you can't do all of that without having a nurturing, supportive environment. So I was just really blessed with great leadership that allowed me to really, flourish in spite of all the things I had going on in my life.
And your kids so they're 12 and 14. So pretty quick, you had like real littles.
Yeah, they're 23 months apart. And I'm, with my first child, I had a great pregnancy. I had a really challenging delivery. And, I experienced some of the things that a lot of moms experience where they go in and maybe they're not exactly listened to. And, I knew what was happening with my body. Maybe I'm not a medical professional, but I could tell I'm an intelligent woman. I know what feels right and what doesn't feel right. And so I did have an experience that a lot of Black women face in their maternal health, where I just wasn't being listened to. Mm-hmm. And what I found out after my son was born is that my son had suffered an in utero stroke.
Oh my God.
My child had a stroke in utero, probably about 6 to 8 weeks before he was born. And, I like to get people past the pain right away. Fast forward, he's 14 years old. He's in high school. He is brilliant. He statistically beat a lot of the odds that can come from a condition like that, having a stroke at that point. But the doctors told us all those years ago that when the brain is under attack in the womb, the brain in the body defends itself. And so had something like that happened to him after birth, he might not have survived. And so it was extraordinary. So my whole mothering journey started off in this very harrowing way, again, with a child who was facing some pretty serious health challenges and sort of a looming divorce. But through it all, I mean, we have a great family. My ex-husband is an extraordinary father. And so we still talk to each other every single day and raise the kids together and do all those things.
So the boys are both from your ex-husband?
No, my older son is from my ex-husband, and the fairy tale. This is a good segue. The fairy tale of the name Castleberry came from my second husband. And at one point in my life, I used to always say I have an ex and a next. Maybe I just keep it real. That my first child was born in this idyllic way. We were together for 10 years and we young love and we got married and had a baby at the end and got divorced. And then I had a baby with a friend that I was dating that became a husband later, but hey,
I love it.
My parents named me Princess. He named me Castleberry, and it made a brand. I love it. My life is
okay. So that is a perfect segue into your name because, of course, your name is magical and it is a fairy tale. You could write a children's book.
You already have the title.
Actually,
The Adventures of Princess Castleberry: Divorces, childbirth and such.
I think if you wrote a children's book about your thought or the way you describe risk would be really cool. So there you go. But anyway, you talk about bad agreements. And so I don't know if we're getting there too early, but I want you to talk a little bit about bad agreements, because you mentioned that your name is one of the first bad agreements that you have.
Well, I was saying
not your name, but
one of the first agreements. Everybody.
First agreements. Okay.
Your name's Jenny.
Could be good or bad.
Yeah. Could be good or bad. Right. Yeah.
You probably didn't choose the name, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So your name is the first of very many powerful agreements, right? Mm-hmm. People tell you your name. They tell you everything that's important to you. They tell you your gender identity, your religion, your language,
your social security,
everything. A lot of things that we believe in, things that we operate under, are given to us, and we simply agree. Mm-hmm. And so this whole concept of bad agreements came up from the idea that there are things that as we grow and we learn and we change, especially as women, there's some things that we've agreed to that just don't serve us very well in the current context. And we have, this beautiful thing called the power of choice that we get to exercise on a moment-to-moment basis. And we get to choose what we're going to continue to agree with. And so it is a way to break certain social constructs. And that whole concept of breaking bad agreements was born out of a conversation and a collaboration with a great friend of mine. She's a fellow speaker, and she's a mindfulness and meditation coach. Her name is Shantae Hooks. And we had both read the book, The 4 Agreements. Mm-hmm. And we were having a conversation about it similar to this, just exchanging ideas. And I brought up the question. I said, this is a great book. Do you think you ever had any bad agreements? And so she started thinking about her bad agreements and then her great agreements. What is serving her really well? And so we came up with this idea that there's people that are still living under a lot of bad agreements. And we came up with a way to help people break bad agreements. And that was really my foray into speaking. It became a launch pad for me and allowed me to create some other really unique frameworks that I use today.
So something I thought was super interesting. It sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you broke into public speaking with a TED Talk?
Yeah, right. Ironically,
go big or go home.
Yeah, go big or go home. It's actually go big or go home is part of my strategy. Even today, as a businesswoman, I usually start and begin nurturing my relationships at the very top of an organization with the executive teams, or if we're thinking about associations, I like to go and work with the national associations first and build relationships, and then sort of parachute back down to the ground into my own state or into my own community. But I do lay a lot of foundation at the community level. But yeah, that TEDx talk was something that was an opportunity that presented itself. I had started my business. Let me tell you this. I started this business in late 2019.
Yeah. Right? And we all know how that,
For perspective, when the pandemic started in early 2020, my sons were first and third graders. They were in first and third grade. So overnight, I went from being a person who was a risk manager with a master's degree in curriculum development and instructional design to becoming a teacher, and that's real. And I did become their teacher because I ended up keeping my children home for 2 years. So the first 2 years of my business, I was also sort of co-schooling because our school was online, but the parents had to be really, really involved on a day in, day out basis. I was busy, but I also had a lot of creative energy at that time because I was trying to think of new ideas and ways to connect. And we didn't know how long the pandemic was going to persist. And so that's when I started collaborating with people like Shantae and people like my friend Nicole Lewis. And we started coming up with all kinds of ideas for trainings and experiences that we can do virtually. And I had this, this dilemma that even though I was a risk professional and I thought I was a pretty savvy businesswoman, I didn't know a lot about sales. Mm-hmm. And I knew that coming, those first steps out of the pandemic in 2022, that I knew that getting my ideas on stage would help me. Because I didn't know enough about the sales process, but I did know that I had great ideas and I could command a room. So if I can get myself on a stage, I will share my ideas and the people who want to work with me or connect with me will come up to me because that's what I do. I run up to people when they come off the stage. I stand in line and I want to connect with them and exchange information. So I thought that was going to be the case for me. And it was. So I got on stage for sales, for an idea to just say, hey, I'm out here and I have a voice and I'm doing some things. Somebody criticized me and said, you didn't make it really clear what your company did. And at the time, my company was called Castle Risk Management and HR Consulting. And I didn't want to do either of those things. The first thing I had to do was come up with a DBA. And my kids helped me come up with that, Castleberry Global. And I had this opportunity to do this TEDx talk. And that moment actually made me fall in love again. I fell in love with the idea of speaking and teaching from the stage, and a whole new career was born. So that was my career as a professional speaker was a little accidental in that way. And if you watch that talk, speaking of the children, I come out on stage and I say, because I'm a Detroit lady, I say, in my city, we say, what up, dome, from the West Side. I'm always representing. And you hear this little voice from the audience say, hi, mama. Oh. And it was my son, my now 14-year-old yelled out. And so I go, hey, baby. And then of course, backstage, I'm like, oh my gosh, like the people at TED are not going to put my talk on the YouTube channel. I had so much anxiety about that moment of just shouting my kid back out. But my baby was so happy.
Yeah.
He was like, I went for it. I said, hey, can you give me a shout out from the stage? And he brags about that. Like, he's 14 and he's still bragging about the fact that he got a shout out. Yeah. And they did publish the talk.
I love that because it shows you're human. It shows you're real. It shows you're a mom.
I couldn't ignore the voice. My baby said, I was like, what up, baby?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do want to ask you, so give us an example of going back to bad agreements really quick before we move on, but give us an example of a bad agreement and a framework.
Oh, yeah. Frameworks as long as the day. Bad agreement, especially I can give you one related to parenting, especially co-parenting, is that I have to be the most important person in my child's life.
Oh, yeah.
That's a bad agreement. I have to be integral in my child's life. I have to be responsible for pouring into him. I'm not 100% responsible for who he or who they become. I'm not in it by myself, even if I'm divorced. So a lot of times, I remember going into that divorce period when my first son was very young and then having a second baby, that I really had this me against the world attitude. And I thought, there's no woman that can love these children more than me. I thought I had to do so much of the work myself, right? Like they were handing out some type of badges or cookies for me. And they're not. And it was my own mother who stepped in. And because I was struggling to get the laundry done at one point. And I was ready. I was like breaking down over the laundry. And I could wash it, but I didn't have time to fold it or put it away. So things were in disarray. And I'm a Capricorn. So when stuff is out of order, we feel real bad. And my mother stepped in and she said, where'd you get this from that you had to do all these things yourself? And I said, well, you did it. And she said, yeah, but what does that mean for you?
Yeah.
And I realized I was comparing myself to somebody who I actually didn't, and I love my mother, but I didn't have a ton in common. We didn't have the same lived experience at all. I became a mother at 31 at a time when I was running a pretty serious corporate department that had a lot of responsibilities, even on a global basis. And my mother, but she was extraordinary. My mother became a mom when she was pregnant at 15.
Wow.
So she was a 16-year-old mom and she was a cashier. And she told me, I've never taken my work home.
Yeah.
When I came home from work, and it was just you. I didn't have two children. I had you for 14 years.
Yeah.
And you got my undivided attention once I got home. And I could pour into you. I never had to take a phone call. I never had a cell phone. I never had a laptop at home that would ding and ring. I didn't have any of that. And so it actually wasn't hard for me to get the laundry done and make you a home cooked meal. We're not the same, and that's okay. And so I had to break the bad agreement that because I came from my mother, that I had to be just like her. And that I had to live up to some, unyielding expectation of what a mother was. And I didn't have to do any of that stuff. And so with my mother, we just kind of wrote what my motherhood looks like. And let me tell you, to this day, all these years later, my motherhood still does not include laundry. You know who comes to my house every 2 weeks? She's my, now she works for us now. My mother has figured out, my mother has 3 children, and I swear to God, she just charges us all for the stuff she used to do for free.
Yeah. She's smart. She started her own business.
Yeah, she is. She retired early because she's a breast cancer survivor. And she was working as a phlebotomist years and years ago, and she had breast cancer, and her treatment and everything caused her to have nerve damage and things like that. And it limits her mobility. So you can't really give shots and things like that if you have some nerve damage. And so she was able to retire. We can be considered an early age, but she's been a mom since she was 15. So she had worked her 35 years, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And she put her time in. And so she's still really young. My mother's only in her early 60s, and she's beautiful and vibrant. So she started, her business is us, her 3 adult children. She travels around and she does everybody's laundry. She comes over and every 2 weeks she comes and resets my home. So who has a service provider that can have a key? Yeah. Spend the night with your husband, that you can go out of town for a week at a time, and they take care of everything the way that you would do it or better.
Yeah. Is she looking for more work?
I know. I'm like, can I hire your mom?
Hire your mom.
I wanted to say, like, Mom, we can scale this. And she's like, I don't know what to do.
HireMyMom.com. I mean, there's
HireMyMom.com. I wish. But no, she works. She doesn't work for us, because she would kill me if she heard me say that. But she works with us, and she supports us. And so my mother is integral to my mothering. She makes it all possible.
I love it. I think that's such a cool story. And I think she's right. Like, they had such a different experience raising kids. They didn't have all the constant distraction. I mean, they had different problems, right? Different problems. But yeah, it was a different world. So us trying to fit into that box, and I find that with so many things, like us trying to fit into the box of this is the path you should take. Go to college, get married, have kids. It's like, who said?
You know what they said? They is one of the most problematic people. They said to do all those things. And honestly, I was a they said kind of a girl. Like, I was like with it. And that was my plan. And I did those things. But it wasn't, getting pregnant with my second son and not being married. It turned into a trigger for me because, and that's what I talk about today. I talk about triggers all the time, because I know how triggers can derail your intention and derail your greatest decisions. Mm-hmm. And so here I was, divorced and sort of starting over. I had a new baby. I'm co-parenting. So I'm doing all these things. And then I have a relationship that was budding, but definitely not what I would call firm at the time. And we had a great friendship. We had a long-term friendship, but relationship was something different. And here we were now becoming parents together. Mm-hmm. And now, I'm single. 2 years before that point, I was married and had no children. Yeah. And in that moment, I was single, and I was nursing a baby and had one in diapers, and I was pregnant. And that was the first time in my life. I mean, I'm being totally transparent here. That's the first time in my life I had a suicidal ideation. And thankfully, that's happened to me twice in my life. But that was the first time that I had that type of thought. And I thank God, literally. I think, my relationship with God, because I know what God's voice really sounds like. Mm-hmm. And I know the enemy when I hear it. And so I was strong enough, thankfully, to get help. And I tell that very transparently, because it happens to a lot of people when we don't talk about it, and people don't know where to turn. And I'm happy I spoke up for myself, and I shared it with my boss at the time, and I was able to get the help that I needed. But my mother, again, she stepped in and she said something to me. She said, I've watched you your entire life manifest this wonderful life. Everything you said you wanted, the schools you wanted to go to, the jobs you wanted, whoever you wanted to date, whatever you wanted to do, I've seen it come true for you year after year after year, time after time. And this, being pregnant and not married and having this job was the first thing you didn't plan. Yeah. She said, so guess what that means? All those years of blessings, now those blessings are supposed to be applied to this moment. All that grace, all that power you built up, bottle that up and apply it to this.
Yeah.
What did you learn in all those years when you were coasting? And I thought about it like that. And I was like, you're right. And she said, yeah, apply it to this.
Yeah.
That's what you should have had on the podcast. She is,
your mom, I think
we might have to have her on. So
life coach. She's a life coach too.
I will show her this, and she will yell at me. She is a hot mess. She would be like, her answer would be so one word. You like, so how was motherhood? It was all right.
Yeah.
well, Princess, I want you to know that Jenny and myself have yet to have our mothers on the show. So
it's a dangerous game.
Yeah.
There'd be a lot of editing.
But yeah, so much of who I am honestly comes from her, is borrowed, is tried and true. And then I have my own, I have my own way and my own priorities with my kids and how I balance it all. So yeah.
I'm going to jump in because I think right where we are talking about triggers is a great intro to your new book that is coming out. I'm so excited. It is called The Truth is in the Trigger. So we would love if you want to tell us a little more about that and when it's going to come out.
So the book, The Truth is in the Trigger, decode the triggers driving your stress and burnout. I created that book because I believe we are currently in a leadership capacity crisis. About, 65% or more leaders are reporting symptoms of burnout and stress and anxiety. And I believe that we trivialize things like burnout because a lot of people don't understand that it's not just overwhelm or not just pressure. Burnout actually changes the size, structure, and function of the brain. And so burnout impacts decision-making at every level, but at the family level, at the, your work level, at the community level and beyond. And so wrote this book, which comes out in about 30 days, just waiting for some final edits to the cover. And it's built on a framework that I created called Live, Lead, and Build Leverage. And that framework is all about building your capacity from the inside out, building up these skills and these capacities that it takes to lead. But yeah, triggers are everything. Like I said, getting pregnant and being divorced and then getting married again, all of those moments were triggering. Triggers aren't inherently negative, but when I do speak about it in the book, I speak about the triggers that take us off what I call our A game.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that can take you off your A game. And my quick definition of your A game is the alignment that happens between your affirmations. So what you say out loud about yourself and about others, your affirmations, your attitude, your affections, your affiliations, and your actions. The alignment that happens, that needs to happen for you to accomplish anything, triggers can derail your A game. So that's the context that I lay it out for leaders, that you want to stay on your A game because that's how you accomplish your goals. But those triggers are things that can derail you, and you have to be very conscious of what those triggers are so that they are things that you can leverage. They don't leverage you.
I can't wait to read it because I work with a lot of leaders, as you know, and you're right. I mean, I think just like we were talking about motherhood, the demands of leaders, there's so many more demands than there ever were on them. And burnout is, it's still, they still don't understand what it is, to your point. And people don't know. It's not just a week off work. We're talking a major life reset. Like, you have to take some serious time to get through that period and to come back.
If people really graduate into burnout, just taking the basic definition and framework of what burnout is, the way psychologists talk about it, it's on a 5-point spectrum, right? And the first 3 stages of it are things that we can typically deal with. So first stage of burnout is honeymoon, what's called the, honeymoon phase. And that's just, you do anything new in life, you get that little tingle, those butterflies. Yeah. Okay, you can get through that. And then the next phase is called the onset of stress. So you think about that as the first time you're up against a major deadline, something new is on you, you're still kind of organizing things and you get that burst of stress. But going from 2 to 3, things get a little bit more serious. And 3, you enter what's chronic stress, right? Mm-hmm. And with chronic stress, some of the feelings start to become more reoccurring, right? Mm-hmm. Or recurring, right? The sleepless nights, the headache, the tension in your back and neck, things like that. The irritability starts to become a more regular occurrence. By the time you get to burnout, which is stage 4, Burnout is where people literally start to break down in their decision making. They can start disassociating from their personalities. They can start going into like retreat or escapism. They start going through cycles of ego depletion, which I cannot, let me just say this on every podcast as loud as I can. You do not have imposter syndrome. That those feelings that people call imposter syndrome is just ego depletion. It's natural. It occurs in everybody, especially when people are under some type of stress or trigger or they're othered. And there's lots of reasons for imposter syndrome. And if people ever slowed down to even read the abstract of the original study from 1978, they would understand it in a heartbeat. Most people that say, oh, I have imposter syndrome, I'm like, did you read the study?
Yeah.
I know they didn't, and I literally used to keep a screenshot of it on my phone, like, check out this abstract. And then you tell me if you have this. Yeah. So that's just the type of lady I am. But when those feelings of burnout, when people get, completely overwhelmed to the point where they are making erratic decisions or can't make a decision at all, when they become recluse, and they just don't find joy in the things that they used to find joy in or things that are natural, that is a real sign that the brain is under a level of stress that you cannot just do a mindset shift. It's getting out of your control at that point. And your brain will turn on you, and the quality of your decision making will become seriously diminished. And if you graduate into what's called habitual burnout, which is stage 5, which is the worst, that is where suicidal and homicidal ideation occurs. And so it's very serious, and we trivialize it all over the place. And I had to put an end to that. And so I wrote the book as a really practical guide. It's only 120 pages, but a really practical way to look at the triggers that we all experience, and just to give people a language around how we manage these things and how we begin to identify, assess, build, and learn through them. And that identify, assess, build, learn, that approach is, if you put it up to a textbook definition of the risk management process, that's all it is. So it comes right back to my background and my mantra that every leader is a risk manager.
Wasn't burnout, and you'll have to fact check me on this, but I thought I heard something about that they actually added it as a, maybe to this psychological, what's that giant book that, they added it as an actual syndrome or?
Yeah, well, let's say this. So the World Health Organization classifies it as a workplace phenomenon.
Okay.
Let me tell you why. And this is the world according to what I call the Associated Princess. So it's not a research house, but this is my me keeping it real, me keeping it 100. The World Health Organization associates it with work. That's because that's when it most likely, manifests. But it's not a clinical diagnosis. It's not a medical diagnosis. And the reason it will never be those things is if you had a medical diagnosis or an illness that was associated with work, it would be covered by something called workers' compensation. There is no way because, and I get it. I don't feel like, I'm not saying that as a like, oh, they're out to get us. It's not that. It's that burnout and the origins of it are so complex that it's really hard to pinpoint what the root cause is, what the trigger is. And when it comes to matters of like corporate business and insurance and covering claims, you have to be able to pinpoint like a proximate cause. What caused this? What started it? And burnout is one of those things where it's just really difficult to say, this is the tipping point. This is the thing. This is what aggravated it. As far as psychological journals, medical journals, and classifications go, they're very careful about how they classify it because it could have some very serious financial implications for healthcare companies and businesses at large. So
definitely.
That's the world according to the Associated Press.
Well, I like that. I like that.
And it totally makes sense because back to your, like when you were pregnant, do you think that was burnout?
You know what? That could have been a lot of things. I mean, I was triggered for sure. I was scared, flat out. I mean, I was just afraid. So I also don't put everything in the burnout. I watched my mother work 3 jobs as a single mom. I watched her be stressed out at times. I watched her not have money to do all the things. And I was just afraid of that. And I was also afraid of the stigma of working in a majority white environment as a Black woman who I was doing the damn thing. I had a great job and a great career. So I was afraid of people judging me for not being married in this conservative environment and having a baby. And then I was afraid of, like, what is my life going to become? Am I going to have enough money to give the life that I know my children deserve?
Yeah.
And I started overworking at the time because I was on an all-out crusade to prove, and this became a bad agreement for me.
Yeah.
Like, just because I'm divorced doesn't mean my babies aren't going to China and Paris. We're going everywhere. And I used to travel with these babies all over the world, all over the place. And I was doing all this stuff until I realized, now part of it, we were enjoying ourselves and I want them to be cultured and have these experiences. But then I realized I don't have to do this alone. Who said I had to fund it all? Who said I couldn't work with my ex-husband and my next husband, who's now my current husband?
Yeah.
Who's to say that the rules were that because you have an ex, you can't be his friend anymore?
Yeah.
So I broke those bad agreements by learning how to rebuild a friendship with my ex-husband, because we had a friendship before we were ever together. We had a long friendship. And so we worked on rebuilding that friendship and what that looked like. And then with my current husband, who said I had to rush out and get married the moment I thought I was pregnant just to save face? No, we didn't get married. We didn't get married until 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And our son is 12. So he was that, and so we took our time and we built a real relationship, and we still work at it every day. The communication of it can be so difficult. And we just built the life we wanted. And so when everybody's like, why is your ex-husband and his daughter and his friends at your birthday party? Because that's how we do it. Don't worry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we wrote our own agreements. We dealt with our triggers in real time, and we're living, leading, and building leverage. I mean, everything I name is on purpose. It's not, this is just my real life. I'm just helping other people catch on to the wave. I feel great.
So Princess, I have a question, because you are a busy woman. How do you disconnect? How do you relax? What are some of the things that fill your bucket that kind of give you a break, right? Because you're going, but how do you disconnect for a bit?
I'm not going to lie. It's really hard. It's really hard. And so the disconnect is staying very disciplined and focused on what I love. Like, you know how you hear if you love it, it doesn't feel like work. No, sometimes this shit feels like work. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to swear on her. Yeah. It's just, we talk about badass moms, so I guess we can say what we want to say. But yeah, it's hard to slow down. So I'm very ruthless with my time. I'm doing this right now because after meeting Jenny, I was like, I want to do this.
Oh.
If I don't want to, I say no. Yeah. And that's a service to me and to the people around me. So I say yes only to things I absolutely want to say yes to. I am unapologetic about saying no or not right now to everybody, to my husband, to my children, everybody around me, because I live it and breathe. I live and breathe my boundaries. They're healthy boundaries, but they're there. And so being disciplined and knowing my value, my worth, what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do from season to season, because seasons change. That's how I keep myself from burning out and not being tired. People see me like, I like to get up. I'm a makeup girl. I like to be dressed up and fabulous and all the things. But catch me on a Friday or a normal Friday. None of this is happening. I rest at least 2 days a week. I'm talking about don't get dressed. Take a shower, put your pajamas on. I don't watch television. I haven't watched television in over a decade. Consumed by all of that. I read. I have one of those little like handheld oxygen machines.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Good for you.
I said glass of tequila. Well, it's supposed to be a shot, but you know,
Yeah.
you know how you want to do it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a glass on ice, but hey,
I love you are intent. I love the intentionality you have around everything.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I want to take many pages out of your book. Not just the book you wrote, but your whole book, like your whole library.
Your journey. So that's another one. It's a tough question, but I love to ask it. What are you most proud of?
Oh, I honestly, and it's going to sound so cliche, but I am very proud of my little human beings. Like, I always wanted to be a mother. I really did. I knew when I was a little girl, I was going to be somebody's mom because I just talk too much. Like, I can tell somebody what to do. But no, this is where it comes from. You know the saying, to whom much is given, much is expected. Mm-hmm. I have gotten a lot of love, a lot of care ever since I was a little girl. My parents, my teachers, community, family, all these people have been cheering me on my whole life. And honestly, I was like, I had to be a mom. Now that was an agreement I made. Yeah. And that some people, say like, you don't have to be a mother. I had to be a mother because I just had too much. And I'm not talking, I didn't grow up with a bunch of money, no money.
Yeah.
Money. It's not financial. But I was blessed and I had a hedge over my life and I had a calling on me. And I took it upon myself. I said, how dare me not share this with a child? How dare me not pour into somebody? And so being a mother is a hell of a risk because after you give birth, your heart is walking around out in the crazy world for the rest of your life. And everything that they do and breathe could crush me in a heartbeat. Yes. You know what I'm saying? Anything happens to them, Yeah. And so it's so vulnerable and so gut wrenching at the same time to give, to let your heart out like that to a person. But I can't think of anything better than that. And it's like to see them every day come back with questions or sometimes the stupid stuff they do too. Y'all are crazy as hell. Like, you're not smart every day, but like to see them come back with their smart questions and their dumb questions, like makes me really proud that I help produce these living, breathing, thinking, empathizing boys that are becoming men and that are not going to do something great. One of the questions, I got to say that one of the questions that you sent me was, what was the best advice I ever got?
Yeah.
And it ties to this, something I'm really proud of. A woman that I met randomly at an event. My friend Crystal would do these women's brunches in January to kick off the new year. And I met with a woman and I had just become a mother. And she said, let me give you my best advice. Never ask your children who they're going to be when they grow up. Because your children were created by God and they are somebody now. Oh. And so she said, your question, the only thing you ever have to ask as a mother to your child is, who are you now? And whatever they tell you, they are now. Yeah. You nurture that. And that is the thing I'm most proud of. I took that advice. And so at every stage, and they've changed so much in these 12 and 14 years, but at every stage, I am proud that I know who my children are and that I can say I have actively nurtured who they are in each moment. And I'll continue to do that as long as I'm here.
That's awesome advice.
That is awesome advice. I love that was just a chance meeting with someone, Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. And I hope those boys,
because you're in menopause, now I'm ready to cry. Look,
I know, exactly.
Cry, scream, we're all there. We are all there.
I know. Well, and I hope I know those boys know how lucky they are, but I hope they know how lucky they are to have.
Yes, they better.
Loves them. Yes.
So awesome. So what we're going to, I don't know how we sum this up because so many amazing things, but I think moving forward, one last little kind of question I'm going to throw out there, what you're most excited for. You've got a lot going on. You've got a book coming out. Is there something, it doesn't have to be work related. It can be anything.
I am. No, it's definitely work related. I'm working my butt off. I'm super excited for the book to launch. With the book, immediately following the book, I will have a masterclass series, and it's a standalone. If you don't want to read the book, you can do the masterclass, and if you can do it both. You can do it all. I mean, I have a really exciting AI product that's going to be launching in January. That's a little hush hush, but you get the sneak peek on that. And I'm excited for all the work I've been putting in and what my family has supported. I'm excited to see these things come to fruition and to just hit as many stages across the country and across the world with this message as we're disrupting the capacity crisis.
Oh, that's awesome. And everybody that sees you and watches you on that stage, I think will become huge fans and followers and help spread the word.
And how can people connect? If they want to go to your website, if they want to book you to speak, how do they connect with you?
So best ways, my website is just princesscastleberry.com. It's literally Princess Castle and berry like strawberry, princesscastleberry.com. I am the only Princess Castleberry on all of LinkedIn. And if you see another one, report her because she is a fraud. I'm sorry if there's another one. I don't think there is though. And, the other channels like Instagram, YouTube, it's Princess Castleberry Speaks. And yeah, I'm out here. Come find me, come connect with me, be my friend on LinkedIn. That's where I am most of the time. And wonderful things happening.
Well, we will be cheering you on and supporting you. And I can't wait to see where you go from here because so much cool stuff. And I do feel like there's got to be a part 2 because I have such a long list of questions.
Yes. Part 2 and bring your mom.
Yeah, and bring your mom.
Cornelia Marie. They're coming.
Thank you so much, Princess. We really appreciate having you on the show.
Thank you, ladies.